Hi guys, we're your TPUSA female contributors and we're here to answer the hottest cultural questions today. So let's just jump right in, guys. We're starting off with the question, why do you think that 27% of women in the US have a mental illness like anxiety or depression?
Birth control.
Okay, I was gonna say that, but I wanted to wait.
I agree with that. And I also think social media plays a huge role in it. Yeah. Everything we're consuming and what we're focusing our time on, like we just keep comparing ourselves on social media, and I think that causes a huge anxiety, stressor, trying to live up to these expectations of these people's highlight reel that we see.
It's comparison is causing anxiety and depression.
I think it's also taught too. I mean, women are also way more on anxiety and depression meds at such an early age, like in high schoolers. And so it's not just older women. And I think it's also just like society with the Instagram and comparison of that birth control too, that then they develop anxiety and then get on meds.
I have a question. So 27% of women?
27%.
I feel like we're more aware of anxiety, right? Like our moms, our parents, it was kind of like taboo. It wasn't really a thing, or you don't talk about it. So is that part of the 27% where maybe we're just becoming more aware?
I don't think so, because I think it depends on what study you're actually referencing here. The CDC recently reported that 1 in 3 teenage girls in America seriously contemplated taking her own life in 2021, which is an even bigger problem than 27% experiencing any mental health disorder like anxiety or depression. I think so much of this is played into the fact that our society and our current culture is taking advantage of the fact that every teenage girl goes through bouts of anxiety or depression or feeling like she doesn't fit in with her peer group. I think every single one of us would have had an experience like that in high school. But today, the answer isn't to push through that and be confident in yourself and lean into your identity. The answer is to run away from girlhood altogether by starting to take testosterone, which would temporarily make you feel really good, right? Your body fat goes away and you get this new sense of confidence, but we're setting girls up in the long run for even higher rates potentially of all of these problems, especially suicide, and demonizing womanhood earlier and earlier.
I was going to say that too. I was going to jump in and say that feminism plays a big part as to why women today deal with a lot of that anxiety and depression, because they feel like they have to compete with men, and we're not men, but we're told we have to compete at that level. We are told that we're too emotional, we're supposed to act a certain way, we have to be successful, and we're downplaying that we are women, that we have things that make us unique. There's things that make men unique, and that really does play into a lot of that anxiety and depression that a lot of young women can feel.
Do any of you go to therapy?
I did. I don't
to.
currently.
Oh, you guys, I go to therapy and I love it.
I don't. I'm too scared.
So nice.
Yeah, I don't do therapy.
Why is it scary?
Christian therapist.
Because I don't trust. So here's the problem: is that once you start going down all of these rabbit holes in health, now I just think that the whole like psychology industry, like I don't trust any of them not to be woke either.
Okay, so I highly encourage you check out what I did in college, which is called mindfulness training. It's more so built on like rewiring the pathways in your brain to give you tangible skills of how to respond to anxiety, depression, or any other issue under the sun.
Or how to recognize
rather than giving you, a pharmaceutical or prescription or something. You're literally retraining your brain to respond in different ways.
And it's hard work. Like I was dealing with that for a while. I've been going once a week for about 6 months. And it's a lot of work. Like it's frustrating. My therapist and I see eye to eye on some things, but I also like that she has other perspectives. She doesn't fully agree with me. But she also has to do her job. And it is so nice. And that has helped because I've dealt with anxiety. I thought I was going down the road of depression, and I asked her and she was like, no, you're not at all. But it helps get through that. Like, why aren't we pushing that? It's a good thing to go and talk to someone.
I think the modern feminist movement does push therapy, but in the wrong way, to where the conservative movement, we don't talk about it a lot. I used to go to therapy. Now I don't think I would go back because I am hesitant with a lot of psychology industry like Alex. But I think that anxiety and depression is also instigated and taught by the modern feminist third, fourth wave feminism, because they're encouraging, things like abortion, which that obviously is going to make a woman more anxious and more depressed throughout her entire lifetime. And so the more that you just turn towards the women's rights movement, especially nowadays, I think that 100% is to blame for a lot of the anxiety and depression in women, and I'm surprised it's only 27%. I feel
Anna,
like it's
you
more.
said something about we think women are too emotional. I actually think our society is encouraging us to be more emotional.
True.
Like if you're dealing with like a self-care day, like it's okay, girl, just cry it out.
Yeah.
Drink your rosé in the bubble bath.
Yeah.
And just
Self-love.
be in
At
tone with
9
your
in the morning,
emotions.
it's okay.
And so I think we are somewhat
Yeah.
like actually actively encouraging people to self-identify with anxiety and depression,
Yeah.
even if it might not be a clinical diagnosis.
I kind of disagree with the therapy take. Not that I think that it's a bad thing, but I think that I know. I think that the reason why so many young women need therapy is because, like we talked about, social media has made it so impossible for us to connect with people in real life that instead of having friends that we can go to, instead of having other strong females in our life that we can go to, we feel the need to go to therapy, and we feel the need to go to a doctor or, you know, a stranger essentially to go and open up about these emotions and feelings, because we really lack in the modern day the ability to have relationships that were a lot easier pre-social media.
Now, with the therapy thing though, I don't like, if it's about a relationship or if it's about something, I don't want to go to my friends because they're going to be on my side. They're going to be supportive of me. It's difficult as a friend to be like, have you thought about this? Or have you thought about maybe this past trauma that you've dealt with? Or they don't have the knowledge or the background to dig a little bit deeper into maybe what your emotional triggers are. And also, I don't want to go to my friends all the time because I want my relationship or whatever you're dealing with, your personal stuff, to be personal. I don't want to go to my family. I don't want to, there's some things that, that's not their business. If it's, I'm just using a relationship as an example, but I don't want someone to think negatively about my relationship just because I need to vent.
Is the ideal relationship one where the husband provides and the wife stays home with the kids?
Yes.
So let's delve into that. What do we think?
I'll start. Yes, and I used to think no, and that doesn't mean that a woman can't have a job, can't not be completely outside the household, but I do think it is a biblical standpoint, like as a Christian woman, like I do see it from that kind of viewpoint of, yes, the woman should be at home with the kids for the most part, but that doesn't mean the dad is completely like out of the picture, and it's an equal balanced relationship in a marriage, which I think we need mentorship when it comes to marriage counseling and going through that so that you can have a positive relationship with that. But for sure, women.
I think a woman's place doesn't have to be in the home, but it should be her priority. And the problem as women is I think sometimes we can struggle with making that a priority when we start doing all these other things. So if you are capable as a woman of multitasking and not letting things fall through in your marriage and with your children and keeping your home, kept well, then I think it's okay to do both, but you just have to make sure that your priority is always the home.
I would agree. I would say, at the Young Women's Leadership Summit, we saw Yeonmi Park, we saw Lila Rose. These are all extremely successful wives and mothers. They have their kids, they put their kids at the forefront. One of the talking points was, those first 3 years of a child's life are very important, very foundational. And so I think as women, we do make that sacrifice for our kids to be there for those first 3 years, but that doesn't mean that your entire life is at home. And also too, we're sold this new trad movement where wives are, stuck at home. But I think if you do look traditionally, women did have let's say a laundry service from home. So they were still at home with their children, but then they were still working. So I think you're right, Alex, there can kind of be a balance there.
An equal balance between the two roles.
Yeah, I just don't think it's mutually exclusive. I do a lot of work in the pro-life movement and have really leaned into that in the last several months. And one of the biggest questions that I get from students who think that they might support abortion or they have heard all of these lies about how much pro-lifers hate women is, I don't think I could go to graduate school, or I don't think I could start my career, I don't think I could start a business and also be pregnant and also be a mom, which is absolutely ridiculous. You as a woman are of course capable enough and strong enough to juggle a ton of different things in the air. There's a reason that we're great multitaskers and men aren't, in my opinion. But I grew up with my mom working outside the home my entire childhood, from second grade all the way through sophomore year of high school. She actually even commuted out of state 5 days a week, which was certainly not traditional. It was not the norm, and there were absolutely difficult aspects of that. But I truly would not be the person that I am today and have the same goals of entrepreneurship and hard work and diligence that I grew up with my entire life, seeing my mom be a great mom, and of course not in a very traditional sense and a lot more time on the phone sometimes than face to face, but instilling in her 3 daughters that we could do absolutely anything we set our mind to, that there was nothing out of reach for us. We could literally become astronauts or the president of the United States, but also can still strive to grow up and dream to be a mom and still raise the next generation with great values.
My mom worked. She stayed home when we were younger, like our first 3 years. She did at-home daycare. When I was in high school, she took a pause just to help me with sports and everything. But my stepmom is a boss and a super hard worker with all of my family's companies and stuff. I think it depends, right? Like I feel like a happy parent or parents is really important to raise a happy child. And whether you have that relationship where it's both of you or if it's just you parenting, you need to figure out what works for you and find happiness so that you then are able to raise a happy child.
I disagree.
Everyone's disagreeing with me.
Brutal.
I think sometimes as women as general, once we have families and once we're married, there are going to be times where we have to be okay being unhappy to sacrifice for our children. So I think
Sacrifice is one thing, but a full lifetime of like sacrificing all of your happiness.
But I don't think it has to be sacrificing your happiness.
And
'cause
that's
your
what I'm
family's
saying.
your
Like,
happiness. Like my mom was.
there can be a change of, hey, you're gonna, maybe someone, you know, the husband wants to go to school or you want to go to school. You guys have that relationship or that communication.
Well, there's a
that will change
fundamental
and evolve.
difference between happiness and fulfillment, I think, ultimately. Happiness is a fleeting emotion. You can't constantly rely on being happy every second of every day of every year for the rest of your life. Of course, there will be seasons where you feel like you have to take a back seat for other people. That's what a sacrificial marriage and parenthood relationship looks like, is laying your life down for your family, but you can still be fulfilled with your life. And I think that's kind of what you're trying to articulate.
Yeah, just communication.
Well, y'all, I feel like y'all covered all of it. Like,
Okay, so we'll jump to the next question here then. So why do 70% of all women, but 90% of all college-educated women initiate divorce?
because we can
I
get out
think
ahead
it's an
financially.
easy-
It's rigged in our favor, and it's very unfair to men, and they know it.
But I think it's an easy cop-out, too. I think our society has just accepted divorce. It is what it is. It's just a piece of paper, and it's out. And I think it's an easy way for people to, end something and just...
Well, let me break this up into 2 parts then, because it starts off with 70% of women. So based on this statistic, it's the majority of women that are initiating divorce. Higher rate, 20% higher if they're college educated. So let's start off with that first portion. Why do we think that it's a higher rate of women initiating divorce?
I think as women always think the grass is always greener on the other side. And so they're going to initiate that. And they're also, I feel like women have more commitment issues when it comes to dating. And I recently did a whole thing on body count, if like body count matters. And I remember reading that statistic, and a lot of people that I interviewed, they weren't shocked by that, because a lot of girls were like, well, yeah, I'm dating and then I get married, but then, I feel like girls have like a gaze towards other men or get the attention from men more than men get attention from women.
I totally disagree with that. I think women are inherently more in tune with the emotional side of a sexual relationship and an intimate physical relationship than men are. That's just how our brains are wired. It's fascinating when you study the neuroscience and the psychology of all of that working together. We are wired to seek out a long-term committed relationship because our brains release the certain type of hormones that they do as soon as we're done having an intimate physical experience with someone that emotionally bonds us to them. So it's more difficult for us just inherently from a biological perspective to sleep around and have multiple sexual partners. We do it because society encourages us to do it.
That's when it messes up their brain chemistry to then want to leave.
Oh, and that of course is a larger cascading societal issue. But I think generally speaking, we are seeking this emotional connection that is more long-term while battling a cultural push that is encouraging us to always look for something else, to always look for something better. So we want to be emotionally bonded with our husbands, but whereas I think men have a tendency to be more comfortable with just where they're at, even if there is infidelity or communication problems or whatever that could cause divorce or lead to divorce in a relationship. For women, that looks like I have all these other options now and society's telling me to go in that direction, so I'm not comfortable just staying in this unhappy situation and working through it. I'm just going to leave.
Right, and I think that gender roles in modern day society have been so degraded too, to where we have told women that men are trash, that we are happier alone, that we can make it on our own, that we can be single moms, and women aren't really told, I guess, the consequences that their children will face in the long term if they don't have a strong father in the household. So I feel like a lot of women are faced with the propaganda today that, you know, like you said, Morgan, the grass is always greener on the other side. We do have a lot of options. I mean, OnlyFans is a huge phenomenon right now, where I was listening to this interview with this OnlyFans 25-year-old who was like, well, if my kids see my OnlyFans one day, they can cry in a Ferrari.
You're going to be proud that you have your little ones and they look at you and go, didn't you want to be a lawyer, Mummy? What happened?
Yeah.
And you go, yeah, but look at all my stuff.
They could cry in a Ferrari.
Oh.
And that's very responsible.
That's yucky. Ew.
Yeah. And so, like, that's the modern day woman.
Morals, ethics, and values, ladies.
Right, and that's what it is we've seen
moly.
such a degradation of values and morals in our culture. We don't value the traditional family. You can have two mommies or two daddies. The traditional family is always thrown to the wayside. And I think that's potentially why this statistic is so high as well.
Someone initiating the divorce, is it more so the breadwinner of the family? Like, what would you think?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's should be added into the statistic.
We need more.
Well, she said a majority of them tend to be college educated, so I would bet they are.
But yeah,
I bet they do make more money
where
than their
it's
husbands.
like it's out of selfishness of like, I'm good, you need me, I don't really need you anymore.
That would make sense for women, honestly, because I feel like a woman inherently and naturally wants a man to also kind of be a little bit dependent on, not a completely dependent relationship, but wants the man to make a little bit more and provide for the family and have that natural provider to the family. So.
And I feel like that can add in a little rockiness in the relationship if the woman is the like provider, if she is the breadwinner, if she is doing everything in the relationship. I'm sure that can make a man's ego go down real quick.
Okay, so out of curiosity then, would you be okay making more money than your future husband?
No.
Speaking from experience, depending on the man, it's very possible.
Yeah, like, but I'm not saying like it's wrong for the woman to be the breadwinner, but I think it does something to a man's ego to make him more jealous, like to make him like kind of maybe add something to the relationship that to be controlling because he's jealous of her because he's or she's taking his roles, so he doesn't feel as manly. So I feel like that might be something to where it pushes her away because he is like so being controlling because she's the breadwinner.
And I think too,
I don't know.
because a lot of videos are going viral right now of women being asked, right, like, what's your ideal figure, salary figure for your future man? And so it looks very superficial, but I think what every single woman is trying to get at is that they want a man that's successful and that's motivated, and that's more motivated and successful and harder working than they are, which I don't know, maybe in the modern day is kind of hard to find. Luckily, I haven't had to deal with that. Ladies out there, I'm sorry if you have to. Okay, girls, how would the world be different if all leaders were women? What do we think?
Oh my gosh, nothing would ever get done. It would be so emotional. It would be an absolute disaster, collapse of civilization.
Everyone would be on the same cycle.
Although
Nothing
it might
would
be
get done
nice
for
for
7
work
days.
schedules. Yeah, we all take a week off. That's nice. I think it'd be curious to define, I'd like the person who asked this question to define what a leadership role looks like. Is this a political leadership role? Is this a cultural leadership role? Is this a religious leadership role? I think there are so many different roles of leadership that women do rightfully obtain in society today. And truthfully, in modern America, there's absolutely nothing you can't do as a woman. I think there's a very real possibility we have a female president, God willing, a really good one in the next couple of years, but is a very definite possibility. How that would impact the entire world, I don't know. But isn't it interesting that we can ask this question today, but nobody would ever dare ask the question, how would our world operate if only all the leaders were men?
Deep.
I think we'd be better off, honestly, if it was all men. But I mean,
I don't know.
We need balance.
There would be less compassion. There would be less empathy. I think those things matter. And that just goes to this point of we've got to have both men and women contributing. You know what I mean?
well, I think it should all be off of merit. because it's like there can be a very strong, hardworking woman who rightfully deserves and earns a leadership role, like CEO, corporate at a job, which totally fine with that. But I don't think women should be obtaining roles just because they need to meet a quota.
Yeah.
And I feel like there are a lot of leaders or just people in society that they're trying to meet that woman and men standard. And I think everything needs to be focused on merit. So hypothetical, I said all men, but I think it does need to be a somewhat of a balance and finding out what that is.
Yeah, I want to bounce off of what Alex said because I think that men and women biologically have, you know, strengths and differences. And just like Isabel said as well, I think, like, for example, Elila Rose is an extremely strong leader.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that a man could as effectively speak to young women about abortion as she can. So in that leadership role, she's incredible. But in politics, I do think that's such a cutthroat industry. And so sometimes we do need a man or, you know, maybe a stronger woman in that type of area. So I
Would
think,
you guys be hesitant to have a woman president?
yes.
Personally,
I mean,
would, yes.
I'm hard
Absolutely.
to answer that question unless I know who we're talking about, right?
Hillary Clinton. No, I'm kidding.
Absolutely not. America answered that question pretty definitively. But it's so difficult to answer that, right? I mean, we could all think of women in our own circle of people that we interact with every day that would make incredible presidents of the United States. But like Morgan said, I would hate to see a woman become president just because she's a woman and then ruin it for everybody else who could make a great president.
How would other countries perceive America having a woman president? What do y'all think? Because I know, like, I mean, there's some countries out there who
Well, like Germany
women
has,
they
or
look down on women.
Angela Merkel got the starburst thrown at her.
wasn't it Italy?
Taiwan has a
Italy has an incredible
female
female prime
president.
minister, so it kind of just depends, I think. How China and Russia would look at this, I have no idea.
We don't know, ladies. But that wraps up our discussion for today. So happy we were all able to agree and disagree on all of this. And thank you, everybody, for watching.